you'd asked me before, what's my mindset towards this? I would have said I'm really goal orientated. And I've added in a second line to that now, which is I'm goal orientated, but I'm journey minded. And what that means is goal is important, but should never be pursued if it's going to be a detriment to the journey, because the journey is what we have. And I think there'll be a lot of people that said, that's not the right way to see this. You go after it at all costs. And then, the struggle is important. And I agree. But for me, there's a line, and I will adamantly fight the fact that it's worth going after both. If you end up reaching the goal and you look around and you go, everything else that is important to me is shot to pieces, is that really worth it?
Adam, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, good. Really good. Thanks for having me on.
No, my pleasure. It is an honor having you on, because if people don't know, we used to have a lot of coaching, you and I, and we had it for, I think, maybe 6 months, around that. And it was a part of my life that I really enjoyed, because for one of the first times in my sort of, I think I was quite young 20s, it got me to reflect. And it's something that I've not done that much of before, and I've been doing a lot since we had that session. So that's why I'm very excited to have you on. I already feel like we already have we're fairly close at the moment, but for people who don't know you, just for quick introductions.
Yeah, okay. Adam Kene. I guess the most interesting part of where I am now is growing Kene Partners. So it's a 7-year-old business that has 45 staff in the UK, and we have a team overseas as well. I was also involved in the forming of Opus back in 2019, and did a little bit of investing, as you might know. I'm a dad. I've got chickens, 2 dogs, a lovely wife. Do race driving as a bit of a hobby, and rowing, tennis, that type of thing. So a really full life. Kene Partners takes up a lot of it, obviously, as CEO there. So yeah, I guess that's the highlight reel.
And what is Kene Partners, to give people more context?
So predominantly 3 things. We help companies access government incentives for R&D. So that's through tax relief, through innovation grants, and then something called patent box relief, which is a reward for having patents that are held in the UK. So essentially our clients are small to medium-sized innovative businesses. Typically they're companies that aren't doing R&D as their predominant activity. So for example, there might be a food manufacturing firm that also creates new products, or a financial services company that's also developing a platform. So less of the kind of hardcore biosciences type businesses, more, like I said, a secondary activity for them.
And before you started Kene Partners, what was the whole sort of ambition around Kene Partners, and why did you start it as a business?
Yeah, so I guess I've always been quite entrepreneurial. When I was quite small, when everyone wanted to be a fireman, I wanted to be a business consultant. As soon as I learned about this concept of business, I thought it was fascinating. And so where we lived in Eastbourne on the south coast, there's a big tennis tournament every year. And it's kind of the warm up to Wimbledon, and we had a kind of a small driveway where we were, and I used to charge people more than the local car parks, but I'd clean their car while they were at the tennis. And that's kind of, I was about 10 or something. That was where the whole journey started for me. Came up with some really wacky ideas, and just always found it quite enjoyable. Got put on hold when I went to university, and then when I left, I started working for big corporates, big advisory firms. And the thing which struck me when I was working for these firms was the client kind of came secondary. Be in senior leadership team meetings, and we spend 95% of the time talking about politics and positioning of people and team structure and remuneration and all of these things. And I was the guy in the corner going, can we talk about our client, please? What are they feeling? How does this impact them, about their journey? And everyone was kind of going, it's this guy in the corner. And then the other thing which I found really interesting was, for both companies I worked at, there wasn't a lot of collective ambition. There wasn't a lot of leadership team going, hey guys, that's the mountain we're going to climb up. And after a while, you'd see amazing people join, get disillusioned, and then move on. And it got really frustrating. And I started thinking to myself, if we just solve for these two issues, client service and the employee experience, and obviously those two things go really well hand in hand. Happy clients, happy employees, happy clients. It's a virtuous cycle. So those were the two founding pillars of Keen Partners. And the time I spent in the big corporates in advance of that, I guess we're really learning the ropes, ready for that journey. And what's interesting is that we're 7 years into the journey with Keen Partners, like I mentioned, pushing 50 staff and, a much bigger company than when we started, when it was just me in my spare room. And yet we still talk about those two founding pillars every town hall. Every time we get together, it comes back to that, is that they've really stood the test of time really well. So yeah, that was the long answer to your question of why, what was the genesis of it.
And what's interesting is I guess you spent the majority of that answer talking about the people aspect and the client aspect rather than I guess like the services and products that you're offering, which is an interesting take, because I think you were talking about it before in terms of most businesses don't think about that. They think about more the products and services.
Yeah. And in a service business, our people are our products. So you get that right. And the rest kind of looks after itself. And don't get me wrong, we still have to fine tune. We still have to make sure that the process is clean and we're doing what we can. But good people are always gonna trump a good product. And interestingly, in our market, people have tried to innovate. They've tried to automate really heavily the client experience. And you log into a portal, and you charge a lot less, and it's automated and the like. And those business models really haven't taken off. And so, yeah, I guess the slightly old school approach by us stood the test of time really well.
As you guys know, this podcast is focused on entrepreneurship. So you guys are probably making things happen as an entrepreneur or just starting out. But my question to you is, are you getting enough support to actually lead to your business thriving? If not, you definitely need to join the Federation of Small Businesses. FSB membership gives you access to all those essential documents, toolkits, and resources to help your business operate, as well as a 24/7 legal helpline. There's also essential business cover and many more discounted business essential products and services. There's also a ton of events every month, both online and in person, for you to network with other small business owners across the UK. I speak from experience. Being an entrepreneur is amazing, but it can be pretty lonely at times. As part of FSB, you'll gain more than just your membership. You'll be part of a community that supports you. So if you want to find out more, visit the link in the description. Thanks so much, and let's go on the rest of the episode. So when it came to growing the business, what were the key growth factors, and then what was the sort of where is the business now?
Yeah, so this year, all going according to plan, we should do north of 7 million of revenue. So that's our fees. The growth factors really have been around team retention, client retention, making sure that they are well looked after, both parties, and that comes down to good leadership, good direction, good incentivization, a good clean structure, and making sure that the client is put at the top of every conversation, their experience, how they're viewing us and how they're working with us. In terms of, I guess, the reason why we've been able to be so successful, we've built an ecosystem of people that work with us and introduce work to us. So instead of going direct to market, looking for new clients every day, we work with a large panel of people that introduce us work. That's not new, that's a well-trodden route. But there's, I guess, one of the elderly statesmen in our company that's been there since very early on, whose favorite quote is, "We're a relationship business that happens to give R&D tax advice and grants and patent box advice, but we're a relationship business first." And that has been a really important aspect of how we've grown, because if there's ever any kind of challenge or dispute, you've got three parties there. You've got the person that introduced us, you've got the client, you've got us. We've got this strong network, and we want there to be a successful outcome. So we've taken a really long-term view on this, and that's been really important.
And then your story started with you having those car parks and then washing the cars and the entrepreneurial journey. You went into corporate and then you started your own business. In terms of, I guess, goals and achievements, was it sort of everything that you wished for? Was it everything that you wanted?
Yeah, I had created, I think, a definition of success in my mind that came through school and spending time with friends and friends' families. And, my view of the world was success was growing a small business, having a family, moving into a nice home. And, those were tick boxes in my mind. And because one of the companies I worked at had a kind of £6-7 million revenue as part of a bigger group, but that was our UK team, that was the ceiling which I saw. I saw that as a big company, and that's the company that I saw. So yeah, that's how it was defined for me. And that's been a really interesting experience, I guess, meeting a lot of those ambitions over the last 18 months. And then where do you go from there? And that's something which has been an ongoing journey.
A journey for you or a journey for the business?
Me. Yeah.
But break that down a little bit. So what does that look like? Because you were talking about, you had the ambition to reach this scale, you hit it. You had the ambition to reach the next scale, you hit it. Like what? It's a cycle, right? But like how are you sort of handling each time that happens? Because are you handling it well in terms of like appreciating the fact that you've done that, or are you sort of, let's just move on to the next?
Yeah. I mean, a mentor of mine talks a lot about celebrating milestones, and I think I'm quite good at highlighting those milestones, taking stock, and then celebrating them. It would be very easy to be on a treadmill with this type of thing. So one of the features of Keen Partners is that we work to a calendar year, and we set a lot of objectives in that year, and then we reflect, and we spend time in January just taking stock and looking back over that prior window, and also seeing it in the broader context of the 7-year journey as it is at the moment, and then being able to really appreciate where we are. But my view on it has changed a lot in the last 18 months. If you'd asked me before, what's my mindset towards this, I would have said, I'm really goal orientated. And I've added in a second line to that now, which is I'm goal orientated, but I'm journey minded. And what that means is the goal is important, but should never be pursued if it's going to be a detriment to the journey, because the journey is what we have. And what I mean by that is right now we're aiming for a handful of goals. But if that destroys the company and the journey and the culture and, ourselves in pursuit of that, that's not worth going after. And I think there would be a lot of people that would say to me, that's not the right way to see this. You go after it at all costs. And then, the struggle is important. Mm. And I agree, the struggle is important. But for me, there's a line, and I will adamantly fight the fact that if it's worth going after both. It's worth trying to have your cake and eating it. Mm. And it is the harder route. It absolutely is. But if you end up reaching the goal and you look around and you go, everything else that is important to me is shot to pieces, is that really worth it? Mm. I would always argue no.
But I guess like from my side, like what is the difference really between journey and goal? It's like, because loads of people talk about goals, and I would just love to get a bit more clarity on this, because a lot of people say, you got the journey, you got the goal, but in terms of like when you set that goal, you do think about the journey of getting there. Mm. So how are they so different in your mind?
Yeah, so the journey for me is the day-to-day. It's the number of hours you're putting in, it's the type of work you're doing, the people you're working with. And for me, the journey is about living in alignment with your values. And that is where my definition of success has shifted entirely. Ask me 5-6 years ago, what's your definition of success? I would have given you some really tangible answers. X number of employees, or a certain revenue, or a certain income level. It would have been quite tangible. And having kind of gone through a journey of achieving a lot of the big boxes that I wanted to achieve or thought I wanted to achieve in my life, I've reflected on it and changed my definition of success entirely now. And for me, the definition of success now is living a life aligned with your personal values. If you can do that, then yeah, there's a strong argument to say that you are a successful human being. And if you think about that, what does alignment mean? What does it feel like? And the answers that come back are things like, I feel fulfilled. I feel engaged. I feel happy, content, motivated, really positive attributes. And so for me, the journey is about alignment. And if you can live in alignment, then that is the ultimate success, I believe.
I want to dig into that answer a bit more, but before going into that, I think it might be interesting in terms of you said your definition of success changed. And for a lot of people, including me before, again, that definition of success was the same in terms of X number of revenue, X number of employees, X number of partners, whatever. What happened for you to have that level of reflection to change that definition? Because that's something that it doesn't change every day. It changes, like, this needs to be a fundamental thing that happens for you to change that view.
Yeah, a really miserable period. Yeah, I think the challenge with idolizing a single moment in time is that it's a bit like meeting your heroes, right? You know, you're expecting everything just to fall into place when you reach the top of that mountain.
Yeah.
And what I'm arguing is it's not about reaching the top of the mountain. It's about loving every step of the way up the mountain and appreciating the fact you might never reach the top, but that's also okay because the journey is so great. And when you reach the next ridge, you can look around and go, yeah, this is pretty cool. Like, I can't believe we've reached this ridge. This is awesome. Let's recognize this ridge, but let's carry on. And for me, I reached the top of the mountain, which I'd created in my own mind, and went, oh, what do I do now? You know, do I climb up that one over there? I don't know. Do I? And so I guess my advice for those on the journey, everyone's on that journey, is take time to recognize the journey you're on and not necessarily idolize the mountain, because if you get there and you've sacrificed everything along the way, you won't be grateful that you're at the top of that mountain. It's never going to be as good as you thought it was going to be, but the journey can be. You know, the journey absolutely can be.
That miserable period, what did it look like?
I think
you don't mind sharing, of course.
I think just a lack of connection with what I was doing, and not really understanding how my input linked to my output, not understanding what the next part of the journey looked like. And, you know, it was quite a tricky period to go, now what, you know? And it does shift your mind and it forces you to think. And I'm grateful for it, but I don't necessarily believe that everybody needs to go through a period of discontentment as part of their learning experience. Hopefully, you know, listening to someone that's maybe been through that, you might go, actually, that's quite interesting. I can avoid that. And yeah.
What's interesting though, is that I think loads of people recognize this and they know this, but they think, and this was me at least when I was listening to podcasts and I was like, yeah, but if it's me, it's different. if I get to that level, I'll appreciate it and I'll be different. Like, so it's only like recently that my mindset's shift in that way, but you actually got to that stage.
Yeah. And don't get me wrong, you can still be hyper ambitious and still go after the big goals. And I'm not sitting here saying, yeah, just chill, just look at the journey and think about milestones. I'm not saying that at all. What I am saying is be mindful of what's happening day in, day out in pursuit of those milestones, and having an understanding of your values will lead you on the path to making better decisions, which mean that you live a more fulfilled existence during that process. And will also be a sense check on the milestones that you're going after and whether or not they are really meaningful for you. And I think that's the most important thing here.
So how do you set those milestones in the first place? Because a lot of people, when they do set goals and milestones, it is based a lot about numbers, but it's also numbers that come from what the typical wider business world considers success. As those original numbers that you mentioned before, So how do you set those milestones in the first place that are more specific to you as an individual?
Yeah. So the first thing that you need to do is have a good understanding of what your values are. So let's take one of my values, which a lot of people share, and that's connection. And that's essentially saying, if I was to live in line with all my other values, and yet it was done on an island, I would feel quite miserable. It's really important to me that I get to have a lot of time interacting with other people and friends and family and colleagues and clients. And it's really important that happens. And if it was just done in isolation, even if everything else was perfect, it wouldn't work for me. So connection is important. So when it comes to looking at a long-term big goal and some milestone towards that, what I do is do something called a blurry, heady, ambitious new era, right? And that's basically saying long-term in the future, blurry kind of, a blurry, ambitious situation I'm aiming for is that at my 70th birthday, I want there to be 250 people there. There are epic people that I love, friends and family and colleagues that I've brought along the way. It's just a big old knees up, right? And so you go, why is that important? Well, yeah, that's blurry, that's cool, etc. But actually, what has led to the fact that I would have 250 people at my 70th birthday? Well, I'm having the headspace and the engagement with my own life to be able to make sure I spend time nurturing the relationships that are really important to me. And I know that ticks my connection value really well. So it makes me think about the long-term future. And then I look at my year and I go, okay, so what's going on this year? Well, why don't I do a big birthday party for my son and invite all of our friends that have kids? Because that just keeps all of my relationships moving really nicely. It's a great experience for him. It's really nice. Just a big tick in the box for connection. And that goes through from a milestone like that through to I haven't seen some mates in a while, like feeling a little bit disconnected. I'm really aware of it. It's part of my journaling process to pick up on connection. I know what I'll do. I'll reach out to 4 or 5 mates to see if they're in London on Wednesday and go for a drink. So the milestones are quite mini, but it's leading towards a big thing in the future. And for each of my values, I've got one of those big, blurry, ambitious, heady new eras.
And I guess typically how many values would one individual have?
5 to 7. Yeah, 5 to 7. I think any less than that, you're probably not covering everything. Any more than that, and there's probably some crossover. So I can give you some other examples. One of my values is wellness, mental, physical well-being. And my blurry, heady ambition here is to be able to play tennis with Theo, my son's kids. And you're going, well, that's a long way off, right? But think about that. Do I want to be really healthy right now because of the aesthetics and feeling great and having a 6-pack? No, I don't care about that. But I do care a lot about being in the right shape when I'm in my 70s and 80s, such that I can enjoy spending time with my son and my grandkids. That's something which does fire me up. So when I think about what I'm doing this week in terms of any type of fitness or well-being or what I'm eating and what have you, I like I said, I don't care about what I look like on the beach this summer.
Yeah.
I care about being healthy. So my decisions are informed by where I want to be in 50 years' time, take a much longer view on it. And therefore, the milestones which I'm looking to achieve this year link to that. So whereas I used to do a load of CrossFit and slam a load of weights up and down, that actually doesn't link in with my long-term ambition of being healthy when I'm in my 80s, because probably not great for my body to put it under that much stress. But actually being able to go and do healthy forms of exercise, play tennis, go rowing, go to the gym, have a run, go for a run, those things do link with my long-term ambitions. So that informs what I'm doing at the moment, and I can build in milestones that are related to that, if that makes sense.
What's interesting though is the 2 values and 2 sort of examples that you've given has nothing to do with the business.
Correct.
At all.
Yeah.
So on one aspect, before you said your measure of success is all those numbers and it's only dependent on you and the business. Whereas what you're saying now is your definition of success, your business is not even mentioned in the last 5 minutes. So how does that come in?
It comes in the form that if you're able to optimize your time such that you're so effective within your working hours, then you have the energy and capability of living all of those things outside. So if I'm working 14 hours a day and I'm walking out of there and I've got loads of caffeine in me and I've been eating a load of rubbish food, and, what's my inclination to go and play tennis, go for a run? It isn't there, right? The world, my business world, needs to be a enabler of all the other things that I want to achieve. And as soon as you can make the link between what you're doing and, call it 8 till 6. I know that's not everyone's hours, but call it 8 till 6. As soon as you can make the link between what's happening there and all the other things that you want to achieve, you unlock a completely different level of motivation for you. And that's one of the biggest challenges. And I did a talk in my January town hall with the team about how to link values with what's going on within your company. So let's take connection as a prime example. A lot of people have it. So I'm saying, if you have connection, you like spending time with people as one of your values, actually walk into a potential business relationship instead of having the corporate barrier held up and go, this is a business meeting, I shall conduct myself in a business manner. Walk in and actually drop that and go, I want to meet this person. I want to find out about their story. I want to see them, not them in their role. I want to connect with them. You get a completely different relationship happening between the people. And so what you'll be able to do in that very small instance is take a very common personal value, link it with the working world, and it's good for them, it's good for our clients, it's good for the business as a whole. People are living in alignment whilst at work. And so it's about trying to understand where those connections can be made.
Yeah, it's very true. I think before whenever I was having like work calls or meetings, I'd go into it and be like, this is what I do, this is what I offer, X, Y, Z. Like, how can we sort of help each other? Whereas now it's like, who is this person? And I think this podcast has definitely helped me in that regard because, as you said, 8 till 6 is that person's professional environment, but there's so much more than just that. And I think the ironic thing is as well is that once you sort of make that connection, make that click in your head of if connection is a value of yours and just genuinely caring about that other person and like getting to know them, I feel like the business relationship also elevates, which is the interesting thing, but usually people don't make that link.
Yeah. And I think there'll be people, I think, listening to this that are struggling to get startups off the ground going, Adam, sounds like interesting, but it's a luxury to think like that. And the pushback I would have on that is sense check what is your internal motivations here versus what you perceive to be the goals which are given to you by society. So if you're sat there going, well, I feel like I should be doing X amount of revenue, X amount of people, like that's what success is. A lot of that's come from external. Actually trim it back and go, actually, what is success to you? Do you want to run a 50-person company? Do you want to run a 3-person company? Because it's much more aligned with who you are. You got to stress test that against exactly what you want. Because if you end up at that milestone and go, I landed here, society says I'm successful, but I'm miserable, then that's mostly because there's a misalignment somewhere.
So would you say like now what were you optimizing before for, and what are you optimizing now for?
So I was optimizing before for growth.
And that's the external as you were just talking about.
Yeah. I'm optimizing now for alignment.
Right. And when you speak to people, and as you said, like you're in a position now where you've grown the business to a decent level now. And as you said, loads of people might say, that's a luxury. The position that you're in, you obviously built the business now. But what you're saying is that this optimization for alignment should start from, far before.
Early on, yeah.
Early on. What's the greatest mistake you've seen people do when it comes to this sort of misalignment or not optimizing?
Fall out of love with what they're doing because they're doing it for the wrong reasons. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And, how you measure success shouldn't be about how much funds have been raised, about revenues, size of team. It's about the journey that you're going through in pursuit of those milestones and going, I'm actually loving this and I could do this forever. That is, I think, ultimate success. And actually, interestingly, if you optimize for that, the success will come in its own way, because you're bringing energy to everything. You're bringing different ideas, creativity. You're going, actually, I'm not just going to do this the way that everyone else does it because that's the way everyone else does it. I'm going to do this my way. And I'm going to build a culture which is surrounded by this, and find people that are also in alignment with the way I see the world, and clients that see it like that, or product that links with that. And actually there's a real interesting uniqueness to that.
What's interesting to me is that all the stuff you're saying, it makes a ton of sense, and where it came from in terms of like the being that miserable place that you were before. What I didn't dig deeper on is when you were in that position, what gave you the strength to look inward, you know? Because it's very easy once you've always looked externally, as you kind of were in that position, and most people do, I think, these days. What made you think that, okay, I've reached these milestones, maybe there's other milestones that will actually make me more happy, but instead you looked inward? Why was that shift? Like, what happened?
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I did look at other milestones as well. And I think, you know, your gut test is really important. If you look at the next group of milestones and you go, am I excited by them? And you're not absolutely, you know, singing from the rooftops and going, yeah, hell yeah, you know, let's go. Then, and I did that, you know, I looked at those and went, right, now it's time to reset and let's go again, recalibrate, next mountain. And I'm going, I can't connect with that. I don't understand why that is, you know, what grow. Everyone's fascinated by growth. Does anyone ever ask the question, why? What's the point? And that's what I was doing. I was asking myself, what's the point? Why go through all of that? And so it was only when I stripped it back and went, why is this important to me? Did I work out why it was important? And the journey of going through that journaling, it was a journaling process, and just basically asking myself a load of questions was what led me to understanding more about the values process, and then linking that through to, you know, your journey. And one of my values is evolution. I don't like standing still. In everything I do, I want to improve. I'm the guy that plays tennis and goes, right, I need to get better at this. I'm just here for a hobby. If I'm doing something, I'm going to get better at it. Otherwise, I'm not that interested in it. Yeah. And so when I looked at that and I went, right, so let's strip away growth and let's come back to evolution as what we want to do within Keen Partners and connect our other business in overseas in Kazakhstan is we want to evolve it. We want to get better every single day. And the difference between growth and evolution is fascinating. If I think about what I want to do, like what growth actually means, growth means getting a bit chubbier, right? Growth it's not necessarily all positive. Growth is hoarding. I want to evolve. I want to be out with the old. I want to take in new. I want to get better every single day. And when I started seeing Keen Partners through that lens, it shifted my mindset away from growth to evolution. Let's get better. Let's just get better and improve every single day. And that has been a really interesting shift for me.
What do you feel like why is it challenging for people to look inward? Like, because you looked outward before you looked inward when you got to that stage. Why is it challenging for people to look inward and ask those questions and journal and all that type of thing that you just mentioned?
Yeah, I think we all have our own protection mechanisms. You know, it's easy to just shun asking yourself questions because you don't necessarily want to know the answers to them. And yeah, I think that's probably a part of it. And, you know, you can go into some conversations with yourself and go, well, I'm not liking where this is going. But actually leaning into some of those weaknesses that's really important, you know, and you can get a huge amount of growth or evolution from, you know, picking on those weaknesses.
But I guess it can be uncomfortable, right?
Of course it's going to be uncomfortable, right? And it's worth doing because it's uncomfortable, I think.
But I think what usually happens is that once you have that level of like discomfort, you look for distractions. So you're like, oh, let me pick up my phone, let me call this person, let me have these stimuli in place to take me away from looking inward, because, well, yeah, it's just difficult to look inward. It's difficult to ask yourself those questions.
And I think I think for me during those uncomfortable bits, I actually remember writing this part of my journaling process. I remember writing about a question which I asked myself was, who benefits if I get this right? Just a list of people. And the list was a lot longer than I expected. And I kind of looked at it and went, this isn't about me in the slightest, and nor should it be. This is about all of the people that, if this goes well, if I can just slightly realign the way I see these things, loads of people are going to benefit. It's really, really, really motivating.
Yeah. How do you come up with those questions? I guess like one aspect is having the willingness to actually look inward. The other aspect is knowing what questions to ask yourself.
Yeah, I think honestly, blank sheet of paper for me was where I started, and just went, okay, where's my mind going with this, and just let it wander and going, oh, why do I feel a bit meh? Well, okay, well, let me ask that question. Okay, so what could that do if I sorted that out, and who might benefit, and where could that lead? And it just happened naturally. And, we've done some coaching together, and the coaching mindset is to ask questions that just keep exploring, digging deeper, and why and how and what would that mean? And, you can do that to yourself as well. Ask yourself a question, answer it, and then ask the next question as though you were coaching that person. You don't need a really expensive professional coach to do that. So I took my own coach's mindset through to it.
And where are you now in terms of, I guess you're still growing Keen Partners. So where are you right now in terms of that journey? And what are the sort of goals? And I guess they're more fluid than they were before, correct?
Yeah, and we still have our big milestones. So every year at the beginning of the year, as a leadership team and as a company, we lay out loads and loads of milestones. And so, that still exists, but we talk a lot internally and, occasionally or externally about living in alignment. One of the things I try and encourage is to give people, give themselves a bit of a break about when they are over prioritizing certain values and neglecting others. And I think people can be really mean to themselves. And I encourage people to talk to themselves as though they were talking to a friend. You wouldn't ever say some of the things that you say to yourself to friends of yours. So, right now, I have an imbalance in some of my values. And part of that is adjusting to being a new dad and being a CEO and fatherhood, and making sure that I'm giving both the attention that they really deserve. So some things do get neglected, but importantly, if you're neglecting one of your values, but you're hyper aware of the fact that you're neglecting it, I think that's okay. As long as it doesn't carry on for an extended period of time, you're on the back burner right now whilst I give this all of my attention. You're not gone forever. Don't worry. I still got you. I'm going to keep you ticking over. So my Monday journal, one of the questions I often ask myself is, what values am I neglecting? And then I write it down and I go, actually, I know that I'm neglecting that, but that's okay.
This might sound like a stupid question, but do values change?
Yes, 100%. They change from big life events. They change because of life experiences, and they should change and they should evolve. And, I'll do a sense check every 3, sometimes 6 months on whether or not they're still appropriate for me. So one of my values is adventure, right? I love unblurring parts of the map. Adventure with an 8-month-old is a tricky thing to do. So what do? Do you reassess it and go, how do I incorporate adventure into part of my life? Yeah, could do. You could go, there's adventures you can have in business, there's adventures that you can have just generally, like perhaps if instead of going, backpacking through Nepal, maybe an adventure right now is taking our son on a camper trip, what we're doing in a couple of weeks. That's a new adventure for us.
Yeah.
Who knows how it's going to go, but might it be that in 6 months to a year's time, that's less of a value for me? Perhaps.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I just want to dispel something, because I know loads of people will say, Adam, this all sounds amazing. I completely get where you're coming from, but I don't have the time for this. Journaling takes ages, all this sitting down and asking myself questions. This takes a long time. I want to be I don't want to concentrate on any of this stuff. I just want to concentrate on growing my business. What do you say to that?
I've had that question so many times. Yeah. I put a 2-hour blocker. At the moment, it's on a Sunday night. It's 8 till 10 p.m. And on a Sunday night, within 2 hours, I can get my values checked, sense checked. I can time box my whole week ahead. I'll make a to-do list, make sure my weekly to-do is there. I can read my plan for the year. And I can get and do my journaling, and I can get it all sorted in this really nice window. And I walk into a week knowing exactly where I'm at and what needs to be achieved. There's no procrastinating that needs to happen during that week. I'm just go, and I'm not stopping going, oh God, where am I going with this? I sleep well at night knowing that I've got a plan, and then off I go. So I talk a lot about this in my company, and it's worth sharing. Everyone will have their own system, whether or not they know it or not. Do you have a rolling to-do list? Are you on Notion, Monday? There's all sorts of people systems, old school pen and paper, etc.
That's what I did.
Yeah, nice. What I would encourage everybody to do is interrogate the system, interrogate your own personal system, because systems can set you free. If you find yourself up at night, the system's broken. Find yourself not knowing what you're doing, focus on the system. There's so much power in getting that system to work for you. And I've spent years evolving mine to a point where it's just right for where I am right now. It will change and it will evolve. It should do. But the system is your answer to that. And if you can refine it so that it's 2 hours a week, I would say that was good value for money time-wise in what it gives back.
Yeah. I think the pushback I always have to that question I asked you is those 2 hours or whatever it is, or whatever, however you would do it as an individual, that time, because loads of people see it as unproductive, right? They see it as this takes time away from growing my business, from reaching out to clients, from, solving, internal business problems or whatever. But from what you're saying, it actually streamlines things going forward. It's like, you've got a plan, you can go, and it's not just encapsulating business. It's like everything. It's your entire life. So that's the way I always think about it, because I was in that sort of mindset of, oh, this takes too much time. Like, it takes time away from what I actually want to be doing. But if I don't actually know what I want to be doing in the first place, I'm actually being unproductive in the majority of the time that I'm spending, right?
Yeah. And what if you're spending 6 months working on a project that's actually completely misaligned with where you want to go? Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I get this huge amount of reassurance that I've got this buddy nearby called my system. It's just, him and I are in partnership, and he's serving me, and I'm working with him. And yeah, I mentioned sleeping well at night. I would encourage anybody experiencing stress and sleepless nights and just feeling a little bit lost to really, really think about their system and spend some time on it. What's in there, and no two systems should be the same. Everyone's slightly different. And it's actually a really enjoyable process. And if you can fall in love with the process of creating and nurturing and managing your own system, then it's a superpower. I'm sure of that.
I want to ask you one final question, but you kind of answered it there, but I want to ask it anyway. What's one thing that you wish more people did?
Appreciate the value of hard work. Honestly, I think society tells us that there are shortcuts. You raise X capital, in 2 years' time, you whip it around, and then boom, you sell it for loads, and waff, everything's good. Nah, I think there's a joy and a privilege in being able to work really hard on something meaningful. And if you can find the joy in that process, you unlock anything you want to achieve. Right? The input is crucial. There's no shortcuts. It's about working hard diligently for an extended period of time, but purposefully, in alignment with what's really important to you. Sky's the limit after that.
It's definitely something that I need to work on myself, is that patience element, because I think it's the generation that we've been brought up on it's just everything quick. We want everything fast. And looking at social media and other, I know like loads of people blame social media for everything. It's like the problem that is the problem for everything.
Yeah.
But it's one of the problems here in terms of it just makes you think that you have to get everything, you have to be successful very, very fast. And from what I've learned, it doesn't work like that. You can have progress quite fast if you know what you're doing, and but if you want real progress, in my opinion, it takes time. So
the ultimate example of that are the Chinese.
Mm.
Amazingly good at long-term strategic thinking. They're not making decisions for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, political cycles. They're not thinking like that. They're thinking generations ahead. And I think we can take something from that. We should be thinking much further down the road about where we want to be. And I think you're absolutely right. And I come back to my point that, it doesn't have to arrive instantaneous. And if it does, great. If it doesn't really matter. If you're thinking about the journey that you're going on, the day to day, what are you actually doing? And does that fill your cup? Does that tick your boxes? And if it does, it actually doesn't really matter. That's all we have. We only have the journey.
Yeah.
We've only got the day in, the day out. And the milestones that you're working to achieve, if you live in alignment, they'll just tick themselves off. You don't even need to think about them. You just look back and, oh my God, what have we done? We've done that, have we? Amazing.
Yeah. Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. Thank you so much for coming on. How can people stay in touch with you and what you're doing?
LinkedIn's probably the best. So Adam Kene. And that's probably the best way of reaching out to me.
All right, fantastic. You had a good time on the podcast?
Loved it. Yeah.
All right, that's good. Well, thank you so much for coming on again. And I'm sure we'll speak very soon. Thank you. Thank you so much for clicking on this episode of The Millennial Entrepreneur. The ambition of the podcast is to share relatable stories from young entrepreneurs doing some incredible things to inspire the next generation, including you listening wherever you are. We've been doing this podcast for over 3 years and the ambition has not changed. The only thing that has changed is the scale of where we want to go. We want to bring on bigger guests for you guys to show more and more relatable stories from young entrepreneurs across the world. The majority of you guys watching or listening haven't subscribed to the podcast yet. All you have to do is click that subscribe button wherever you're listening, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and that will allow us to bring on bigger guests and ask the questions that you really want to hear. And it really is that simple.